The second thing I want to talk about today is going to be a bit of a recap of the 2023 MLB season, or at least some of it, right? The parts that I thought were confusing, I thought were great, I thought, teams that overperformed, underperformed. Obviously, I'll talk about postseason, mainly the Rangers and Diamondbacks, of course, that made the World Series. So I'll just jump right into it. It was a terrible year, obviously, for my Red Sox. Ended up in last place. Not a shocking season. I do believe that I predicted us to be in last, when I talked about it at the beginning of the year, but, definitely not where you want to be. Not a surprising outcome, but certainly one that you never want to have. I would say that the second most kind of disappointing thing for me this season specifically was the performance of the St. Louis Cardinals. I had them winning their division, and obviously they didn't even come close. I think they may have been in last. I can't remember off the top of my head, but either way, they were terrible, severely underperformed. Definitely not where you want it, where you wanted the play to be. I think the pitching was bad. I think that the offense took a huge step back, and I think, quite frankly, I don't really know where the Cardinals go from here. Obviously, they just signed Sonny Gray, so clearly they are trying to add pieces to the core. They still believe that this core has some value and has an ability to bounce back this upcoming season. We'll see if it happens, but right now I'm just disappointed in the Cardinals. I think that was definitely the most disappointing thing outside of, obviously, the Red Sox performance this year. I really believed in them. I believed that their team could be better even than they were last year. I thought that the way that they were playing last year, or 2 years ago now, obviously, I thought that they really had a chance to be great if they can kind of, keep that momentum rolling and if they figured something out, and clearly they didn't. So that was disappointing. Again, I know I've mentioned it a couple times on this podcast and even a little bit here. I have, it was just a weird year. Teams that you thought would do well, obviously, like, Cardinals, at least for me, for example, they didn't quite get there. Teams that, to me, should have been way worse than they were pretty good. I look at, the Brewers and, the fact that at least for a lot of the year they had a negative run differential, and yet they were 10 or 15 games above 500 at one point. I don't think they quite ended the year 10 or 15 games above 500, but obviously, regardless, they performed really well in close games. So that was really interesting to see. And yet the weird thing is that they traded Josh Hader. So it's one of those things where, you're confused as to why, when you're winning a lot of close games, you kind of trade your guy that's your end game guy. And obviously they have Devin Williams and they have a few other pieces in that bullpen that are pretty good, but I don't know, just an odd scenario there for me, at least. I believe Hader's a free agent this offseason as well, which obviously could have played a part in that, but we will see kind of how that goes. He had a pretty bad year in San Diego this year, so I don't really know how that's going to go exactly, but we'll see. But yeah, they were a team that I really didn't think would perform as well as they did. Not necessarily going into the year. I thought that they'd be a decent team. They'd be somewhere around 500, and realistically, they were slightly better than that. But I think that when you have a negative run differential for most of the year and you're still tops in your division, I think that that's just bizarre. I think I talked about it on the podcast a few months ago during the season that the only team that had a positive run differential in that entire division at that point was the Cubs, and they were 6 or 7 games below 500, and you had two teams that were either at 500 or above that had negative run differentials. So just a weird time. At one point, the Pirates were, really killing it for a playoff push, and then they just completely fell off a cliff, and I think ended up either coming in second to last or last place in the division, or at the very least third, and were well below 500. The Reds, I think they're an exciting young team. I think that I'm very happy to see their growth and all those young guys kind of coming up at the same time. I think in a few years, it's going to be tough because, all those guys are going to be free agents around, if not exactly at the same time. Obviously, if you don't sign some of them, staggering it for long-term deals, which I assume that's what the Reds are going to try to do. Some offseason sign one or two guys, and then another offseason sign one or two guys. And, if all those guys end up panning out, certainly the Reds aren't going to be able to keep all of them. But Elly De La Cruz, man, I wish I had known more about him before he got called up, because he is electric. I know that's part of his nickname, but it's the best word I can come up with, and it makes sense for him. He's truly a one-of-one athlete in our game right now. It's amazing. And, one thing I will say, I feel pretty good. I picked in my pre-year predictions, I got most of them wrong. Although I think I did pick Corbin Carroll to win Rookie of the Year, so that's fun. But outside of that, the only one I got right to my knowledge was Ronald Acuna coming back and winning MVP this year, which obviously now seems like, oh, well, yeah, duh. Of course he was going to, but it wasn't a guarantee at the beginning of the year. He was, he had just come back the year before from ACL surgery. His power had plummeted for that half a season that he played, or a little more than half a season that he played. He was still stealing bases. He was still getting on base. You could tell the batting average was still going to be there, but the power just wasn't there. And so it was not a guarantee that he was going to get that power back. You obviously had hope, and he's young enough that it could certainly happen. And obviously a full healthy offseason, you were hoping and you were hopeful, but it certainly wasn't a guarantee. And it came back in a big way. Obviously a 40, 70 year, whatever it was, something absurd. Just crazy for Ronald Acuna. And I'm very, very happy for not just him, but for, Braves Nation all around the country that, you get your superstar back. And then Matt Olson, what a revelation he was. I had somebody at my office last week or 2 weeks ago tell me that they actually think that Matt Olson is better than Freddie Freeman. And I certainly think that he performed better than Freddie Freeman last year. But just ponder that for a minute. A Braves fan thinking that Matt Olson is better than Freddie Freeman, and while I think in totality of their entire careers disagree, clearly, last year certainly that was the case, and there are now Braves fans that are fully off the Freddie Freeman train and are on the Matt Olson train and think that he is better, and that says enough, for me at least, as to how well he's played and how great that trade has gone over for them. I think certainly there's an argument to be made. Well, let me rephrase that. I don't think there's an argument to be made that Matt Olson performed better than Freddie Freeman last year. I think obviously Freddie had a good year too, but Matt Olson just was out of this world good. And then I also don't think there's an argument that Freddie Freeman has had a better career than Matt Olson. I don't think that there's an argument there either. So, we'll see how it goes, but certainly Matt Olson is on a great trajectory, and he has really endeared himself to Braves fans, and that certainly goes a long way. So good for him. The Orioles, wow. Didn't see that one coming at all. I did not give them any credit. I think I said that they would be fourth in the division this year. I think I might have even had the Yankees winning the division, which that I'm going to talk about that too. Terrible take on my part if that's what I said. I'm hoping I said the Rays, but at this point I can't remember. But either way, didn't see the Orioles coming. Didn't see them performing this well this early. I don't think that they're going to again next year. I think that they're going to regress a little bit. I'm not saying that they're going to be bad. I'm not saying that they're going to, go back to being a 65 or 70 win team, because that's not true. But, I mean, you won 100 games, and you got absolutely demolished in the playoffs because I think what we saw was true talent winning out in the playoffs. And I think that the Orioles, while obviously they won a lot of games in the regular season, I think that their true talent is still a step below the top tier in the AL, in the the Astros, the Rangers, obviously the Rays, teams like that are that are the top of the hill in the AL right now. I'm not saying that the Orioles can't get there, but obviously I think they have to have a big off season. I think they have to bring in some more pieces. I think their young guys need to continue to develop, and they need to stop relying so much on their bullpen. They need to get starting pitching help. Grayson Rodriguez was great this year, but he can't. You can't just count on one young guy to carry your team. And obviously they're not counting on just one young guy, but the point being, I think that they need more arms, quality arms, not just arms, but they need more quality arms. And that's not to say that they haven't tried. I'm sure that they have stuck their name in the hat of a lot of free agent pitchers over the last couple of years and haven't been successful. But I think when you win 100 games, I think that speaks volumes to what you can now tell teams in free agency. Or not teams in free agency, but players in free agency. Hey, you come here, you play for this team. We won 100 games without you. Imagine what we can do with you. Imagine what you can do for us. Now, you might know in the back of your mind, your team's not good enough to win 100 games again, but that's still something you could say. And none of what I said is a lie. You won 100 games without that person. Imagine what you can do with that person. None of that's a lie. So I think it goes a long way. I think the Orioles need a big offseason to really cement themselves on top of the AL East because, again, I know the Yankees were bad last year, and I don't anticipate that changing without some drastic overhaul on their team and basically a complete change in philosophy. But the Rays are still here, and the Blue Jays, while they seem to underperform towards the end of seasons, they are another year older, another year wiser, another year more experience for those young guys, Bichette, Guerrero, right? They are rumored to be one of the teams that are trying to bring Shohei Ohtani in. Obviously, he won't be pitching for them this year, but even that bat in the middle of that lineup in that ballpark at the Rogers Center in Toronto would be a huge weapon for them if they were to be able to get him. And then obviously going into the future, if he was able to stay healthy and pitch for them. Their rotation in and of itself is pretty good. Alek Manoah, I don't know what happened last year, quite frankly, but I'm hoping he's young enough to bounce back. He's going to have a full healthy offseason. I'm hoping that he figures it out and gets back to at least close to his prior form. Kevin Gausman was a Cy Young candidate last year. Yusei Kikuchi had, I think, his best year as a pro last year. Hyunjin Ryu was hurt for a lot of the year, but when he did come back, he was mostly effective. He wasn't quite himself. He's not, going to be, winning Cy Young awards at this point, but he's obviously a great third, fourth, fifth starter wherever you want to put him. And I'm not sure if I'm forgetting any, phenomenal prospects or anything like that. There's always like your Nate Pearsons, but I think at this point, I'm not so sure about him. But the Blue Jays have a decent core. Obviously, they have weapons on all sides of the ball. We'll see how it goes, but they're there too. So I think that the Orioles need a big offseason to really, really cement themselves. And so we'll see if that happens. Another team that surprised me was the Minnesota Twins. I thought that they played a little bit better than what I thought that they were going to. Obviously, they won a playoff series this year, and that broke. I don't remember what the number was, but I feel like it was like 9 or 10 or whatever straight postseason chances that they ended up losing in the first round, and they broke that streak this year. Didn't make it any farther, but you know what? They surprised me. I didn't think that they would be as good as they were. I didn't think that their pitching was going to really carry them, but obviously Sonny Gray pitched very well for them, and then the rest of their rotation either held strong or stepped up. So I think that they really have a good kind of year to build on in Minnesota, and I think that they are going to hopefully be able to attract some free agents that are going to help build that bullpen and continue to help build that starting rotation. They have to replace Sonny Gray now. Well, maybe not have to replace him, obviously, but they lost Sonny Gray, so you're going to have to find production elsewhere in that regard. The Chicago White Sox, that's probably my worst take of the entire offseason. I picked them to win the division. I was still a believer in the White Sox. I don't know why I was. Obviously, now in hindsight, you look back and it was silly to believe that. They're done. I think at this point they've got to trade everybody and rebuild, which it's heartbreaking because I thought that they were going to win one, maybe even two World Series with that young core a few years ago with all those trades they made and all the young guys coming up all at the same time, and the Andrew Vaughns and all those guys just haven't really panned out. It's sad. Now Dylan Cease has been really good. I think last year he had a bit of a rough season, but before that he was obviously very consistent. I think he could be a great trade chip for a team either this offseason to get some help or even at the deadline next year. If the Chicago White Sox want him to maybe build back up his value, because obviously he is coming off a bit of a down year, so maybe his value is not quite where the White Sox want it to be. I'm not sure what the situation is there. Obviously, they have other pieces in their bullpen that I think could really help people. They already traded away, Lucas Giolito and Reynaldo Lopez last year. Reynaldo Lopez, I think he signed somewhere already this offseason. I cannot recall. Maybe it was the Braves. I can't remember. If somebody in the comment section knows where he signed, let me know. But I think he signed somewhere. I'm not remembering where. So we'll see. What's going to happen there. In terms of the White Sox, who are they going to trade? Who are they going to keep? Are they going to keep trying to build around, your Luis Roberts and your Eloy Jimenez's and all those guys, or are they going to blow it up by the end of the year? But again, very disappointing, at least for me. Maybe everybody else saw it coming and I was the only one holding out. And if that's the case, then that's the case. It is what it is. Sometimes you're late to the party and by then the cops have already shown up and all the food's gone and you just got to go back home with your tail tucked between your legs. Sometimes it happens. So I'm trying to think of if there's anything else I want to talk about in terms of this. And I'm not really coming up with, maybe the Phillies, I guess. I thought the Phillies would win the division. I predicted that. Obviously didn't know the Braves were going to have a historically good offense this year. If I had known that, clearly wouldn't have picked the Phillies. But I think the reasons why I picked the Phillies came out in the second half of the season. I think they struggled really hard out of the gate and then really picked it up in the second half of the year. Obviously, we're one game away from making it to a second straight World Series without even winning the division for a second straight time. I think that there's a reason for that. I think they have a lot of big game players over there. I was mildly disappointed in them when I talked about them kind of in my mid-season reviews, but I did think that there was a lot of time to turn it around, and clearly they did. Trey Turner really, really struggled to start his Phillies career, and then he really, really picked it up. Obviously, Bryce Harper was a natural at first base, which is never a guarantee, but he played really well over there, and his bat's always been there. Obviously, the bat speaks for itself. Guys like Castellanos and Schwarber and Alec Boehm, stepping up and, playing very, very well. Obviously, they lost Rhys Hoskins to start the year, which did not help at all to begin the year. And now I believe Rhys is a free agent, so we'll see if he goes back to Philly or if he goes elsewhere. I'd love for him to go to the Red Sox. I think he'd be a great fit at that ballpark. And obviously we always need first baseman. At the very least, you can do DH for him because, the Red Sox just need talent. But regardless, we're not, I don't want to get into free agency stuff yet. That's for another podcast. But that's really all I'm going to talk about, guys. Let me know what you all think about this MLB season. Was it good? Was it bad? Was it weird? Who do you think underperformed, overperformed? Let me know in the comments section. I'd love to, again, hear your thoughts on that, so that we can see if there's any common ground or if there's any disagreements.